Okay, so we're going to get started by looking at the form that you just filled out. Google Forms was originally made with the purpose of surveys a few years back, further than a few years back. I forget a lot of the times, it's been a while before my first year of teaching. So if you don't know me, my name is Du. I'm one of the ed techs for Jackson County ISD, and I taught 6th grade for about 5 years. And I taught English language arts and social studies. So as a teacher, I tried my best to kind of forego spending time at the copier and copying lots of tests and quizzes. So I tried to use a lot of tools that would help me go paperless, so it would save a lot of time and efficiency as well. And I used Google Forms a lot. It was one of my top tools, favorite tools to use for students. I could do anything from bell work to quizzes to longer tests to if and then adventure kind of scenarios. So it is a tool that has started out pretty good, but has just gotten so strong and a lot better through the years. So let's take a look at the quiz you just took. And you will notice that when you took it, it looked like this. It was straightforward. You had your name. It was required you to type in your name. And then you had a few multiple choice questions that you can see were worth 1 point each. And then you have a bunch of different kind of check boxes that you could click for your top 3 characters. And when you took this quiz, that was all it was. You submitted when you're done. That's what you saw on your end. You can kind of see your score too, because I allowed you to do so. So I will kind of just go through those steps again, just to show you kind of what that looked like if you want to see another view of that. And the best characters, honestly, you got to go with Hermione. She's awesome. And of course, I am a sucker for Snape's story. And then the other character I would have to pick, oh, this is really tough, but I'll go with Mad Eye Moody because I think he's funny. And then I'll submit it. And then, of course, if you were allowed to see your score if you wanted, and you click on View Score, you see that I got a perfect score. And your students have this option too when you turn it on. So that's kind of a in-depth look at the form that you kind of went through. And now I'm going to show you a peek of the inside of the form and why, and this is kind of a plug for why it's such a powerful tool. This is a peek of the inside of the form. This is the creator side of things. I of course, have control to edit all the different type of questions in here, and I can make it worth different points, and I can change the type of questions that I give to students very easily. And of course, the creation tools in Google Forms are very powerful and very great. But I think for teachers, one of the best reasons to use Google Forms are the data summaries you get right after you get some responses. So when I click on responses, I can see some really powerful summaries in graph form. It shows me here through some insights that the average for the quiz was about 50%, 2.5. The median for the quiz is about 2, and the range is 1 to 5, meaning some really good summaries here. You can see my 5 at the top, and then your scores here at the bottom. It's okay. You don't have to be too ashamed of your score. And welcome, Laura, to the training. If you'll take this attendance quiz real quick, it's based on Harry Potter, and that would be great. And I chose Harry Potter because they just released yesterday a full-on chapter of the Philosopher's Stone / Sorcerer's Stone read by Daniel Radcliffe out loud. So that's why I chose a Harry Potter attendance question. But as you take the quiz and I get responses, that data will change instantly. And or if it doesn't, you have to refresh it, but it usually updates pretty quickly. I get other insights and whatnot as frequently missed questions. I see everyone's name that took the quiz, and I see each question broken down by what was percentage of question picked. So imagine if you were to ask a question and maybe even if you put after the question standard 6-1 RL something, so you could see the percentage of students who have had that corrected, and the percentage of students who missed it, of course. So there's some powerful insight here on which questions are correct and whatnot. And the graphs you get are based on the type of answers that you put in there. So you can see that I've got some powerful individual question insights as well. As I go down to each question, here's actually the checkmark question at the end. So Google Forms senses that it's a checkmark question. So it kind of gives you this type of data for a checkmark question, whereas multiple choice questions gives you this data set where you see who got the question right and who got the question wrong as far as number. And then for here, we see that Hermione is the top character. That's some good insight here. And then all the ones that weren't picked. But that is just kind of at a wide scale, the data points that you see with Google Forms. What's great for Google Forms is you can actually break it down by questions as well, if you wanted. And you can also break it down by individual students. So I see right here CJ's quiz. He's gotten a lot wrong. It's okay, but then he gets a few right. And you can see specifically CJ's responses. So thinking of your students, if you need to see more insight on a specific student, that's great. Forms allows you to do that. And I don't usually show this feature first, but it's a good plug of why you want to use Forms. It gives you powerful summaries that you don't have to make at all. You can just look at and kind of guide your instruction that way with questions. Okay. Any questions about the form summaries?
Hey, Dew, we're getting a lot of feedback. I think your mic is rubbing against your shirt.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There we go. I'll just take it off real quick.
I wasn't getting any feedback at all. I don't know why.
Oh, you're not? Okay. It must be just me then. It was like
Okay. So hopefully that's better, but here we go. Now that's on the back end. After your test, your students have submitted, you have this amazing summary, and it's something that you can take to your principal. It's something that you can kind of show students individually if you need to, or the class. You can have a conversation with the class, show them this graph and say, hey, everyone, how come this happened, blah, blah, blah. It's at your disposal to use however you want. But we're going to shift gears and go right back to basics and talk about Google Forms and how to make your first form and some things that you might want to consider when you make forms. So there are two ways that you can start to create a Google form. For Google's name conventions, you can go to forms.google.com and it will take you right to Google Forms. And from here, you can create a blank form. They have templates that you can use like exit ticket, blank quiz, assessment, event feedback, and worksheet. So you can always click on one of these templates and you can even expand it and see some more that they have. There's a ton of templates that they have there for you to use and kind of just fill in the blank as far as what you want for your students. But it's really confusing here. You can kind of see all the forms I have ever made, and it's a ton of them that exist here. So it's hard to find things. Even if you use the search, it's really kind of difficult to narrow your forms down. What I always tell people is I like to just create forms from the actual drive. So I'll go to my drive now, and I'll select the folder I want my form to go in. So I'm going to go in my test folder 1 because that's what I want my forms to go in. And I'll double click on my folder. And all I need to do to create a form, and this helps me kind of organize things because wherever you're selected so far, wherever it says on this kind of bar space where you are, I'm in test folder 1 currently in my drive, is where the form will be created. So all I need to do is click on that new button. And when I click on that new button, I'm going to go to pass all the big three. The big three are Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides, and then go to More, and I'll have the option to create a form. So when I click on that, it's going to create a form right in my test folder 1, and then it will bring up a new form as well. You can see here when you create a Google form, it's kind of defaulted with a certain theme, and it gives you an entitled form up at the top, and then one question to start out with. If I went if I'm gonna give it a title, just I always like to do that just so I know that the title is there and it's not left at untitled form. So I'm gonna put this as, we'll go quiz 1, and it'll change automatically right there. So now I've got a title. I know what it is. It'll help me organize my forms in my folder here. And it'll also help my students realize what it is. You can see that quiz 1 is now there in the folder that I chose to create it in, and it is ready to go. I can always find it in the test folder. It's organized there really well. Okay, so I always like to give my form a title. It helps me organize. There's also a description if you want. Please finish the quiz and push submit. You don't have to put any type of description for your forms, but I find it helpful for students if you have the directions up at the top so that their eyes immediately go from the title right to the description right underneath. So I always like to put some type of description there. You can use forms, as you saw in kind of the Google Forms templates, as an exit ticket, as a blank quiz, an assessment, a worksheet. So it's nice to put some directions right underneath the title so your students know the purpose of their assignment. All right, we'll go with the first question. And if this is a quiz or an assessment or an exit ticket at all, I always make the first question the name so that you know which students submit when you see the data points. So all I have to do is start typing in name, and Google tries to save me some time by just automatically turning it to a short answer. That's what I want for name anyway. So if you didn't see that, I'll kind of show you again. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to show you again. And I'm going to type name because I want it to be my first question. Google just changes it from multiple choice default to short answer because it senses what type of question I want it to be. And then any questions about that so far? About forms or anything we went over? Okay, remember, if you do have a question, CJ is right in the chat, and he is more than capable of answering all the tough questions about forms. Try to push him. Yeah, you like that, CJ? Okay, real quick, I have my name in there, and there are a couple things inside the question box that you want to take note of. Right at the very bottom, it'll kind of give you a preview of what the students will see when they go and take the quiz. For short answer, it's just a small little checkbox that they can type in like one or two sentences. So name, short answer, perfect. At the very bottom, there are a couple icons you want to take note of. You can duplicate the question, you can trash it, you can make it required, meaning students have to do it or they won't be able to submit the form. So if you click that required button, they will have to complete the question in order to submit the form. If you go to the 3 dots, you have a couple things where you can click on that changes that question as far as adding things. So if I click on description, I will add a little description for the specific question. Please use your full name. And then again, that'll be helpful for students as far as you know, guiding them to what you want. And think of it as a paragraph kind of question where you have a prompt. What is the central idea and how do you know? You can put under there, use 3 supporting details from the text or something, and that will guide them to getting a more specific question. And of course, there is response validation as well, meaning that is a kind of, if you put that there, it gives you a specific type of criteria or else students won't be able to submit. So that one is a little more advanced feature. If you wanted to know about that, I can kind of get with you a different time and kind of show you that, but we're going to focus more on the basics today. So I'm going to uncheck that and then show you the other features that I kind of talked about. We have the duplicate feature here, meaning if you had another short answer question that you wanted them to answer, this could save you some time because it'll set up the template for you. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll click duplicate, and now I have the exact same question here. I want a short answer question, so I'll just say email. And then, of course, it is right in there for them to type and ready to go. So I'm just going to leave that there and then talk about some other things that you can add to this Google form. Since we're in quiz mode, I'll kind of go and talk about all the different questions that you can add to this Google form. When I click on Add Question, I have, it's always default as multiple choice question. So you can pick any type of multiple choice question format you want and the amount of answers that they're able to click on. This is the central idea. Option 1, 5, red. So I can keep on going and add in the different options if I want. So, and I saw that question pop up. So we had a couple people come in late, and that's totally fine. It is being recorded, so you'll have access to this recording, and so you can kind of watch the parts that you missed. All right. So real quick, that is a multiple choice question. And when you add all those in there, you have the option to keep going and add whatever you want, or you can just add other and it'll say other. And when they click on it, they can type in a specific answer. And of course, I always like to do the practice of making it required. When you make it required, it forces students to have to answer that in order to submit. So that's a multiple choice question. The next type of question that you could add is the checkbox question. You kind of saw that in your Harry Potter quiz, the attendance that you took. So when I click on checkbox question, I have, of course, the question that I add at the top, and then all the different options that I want students to kind of be able to click on. So when I add all these, students will be able to check multiple times which options to pick. So think about the question, which are the supporting details for the central idea? They can click on the details there, and then that would answer the question. If at all you wanted to see where the form is and how the students will see the form, there's a nice option right up the top right. There's an eye kind of icon. So when you click on that eye icon, it's going to give you a preview of how the form is going to look. So this is how the form is going to look as students are taking it. So I'll put my name in it and email. And so far, they don't have a multiple choice question. And if they put in other, they can type in a different response. And of course, that's what a checkmark question looks like. And so that's the quiz so far. So you always have the option to kind of look at your form to see how that is going along if you were curious. And it's always a good practice too, just to see how it is on the student side of things. Okay. We'll cover the next question as well. So when we click on that plus button, we have a drop-down question. You can, of course, type in the answer and question, and then what it will look like on the student side of things is what it basically says. A little drop-down question. You have the question there, and they can choose a single option. So it's another view that you can take advantage of in Google Forms. And that is the drop-down. Any question on the type of questions that we've gone over so far?
So the drop-down, I mean, it's kind of just like multiple choice, except I don't know, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like multiple choice, but if you saw the drop-down options, it is something for short little answers to appear. You wouldn't want like really long answers in a drop-down, where this might be a good fill in the blank for a vocabulary question.
Okay.
So what word would fit best here in this blank? And they could choose the word that would fit best in that for maybe a past tense, present tense question, something like that. But drop down is good for like short responses, like 1 or 2 word items. The multiple choice items, you can see that if visually it fits better there because you have more room for them to kind of read. whereas Dropdown is a quick, like 1 or 2 questions that have to do maybe with the vocab. Good question, thank you. That's the Dropdown question. If I click Add Question again, I can choose a couple more items. There's the file upload, so students can submit a specific file if they wanted from their computer, and that will generate a folder for all those files. So that's a nice one. You have your linear scale, and that's kind of like your best, worst, better choices. So if this is like on a scale of 1 to 5 type question. So this is more of a survey type question. So you wouldn't necessarily take advantage of it in a quiz form or anything like that, but that is there for you if you ever wanted to do a survey. You have a multiple choice grid where it allows you to choose different, your students to choose kind of a row and column of what's going on. So if I keep on adding different ones, and I'll show you what that would look like on the student end of things. This is kind of what it would look like. So students could check the grid, and it's the same kind of scale where maybe question 1 is, would you rate this class as exciting? 1 being no, and 5 being extremely exciting. So that's another kind of scale question that you might necessarily use in a classroom environment. And then the grid checkbox. That's kind of the same idea with where they're able to give you a lot of different feedback for maybe your class assessment for your own courses and whatnot. But those are your different type of questions that you can kind of add in Google Forms. Or just with that plus button, you can add all those, and you can also add the date and time if you want. What's really nice is if you're not doing a quiz and you want them to give a written response, the paragraph tool is a great one. So if you click on that paragraph tool and you kind of use this for bell work per se, what was your favorite activity? What was your favorite show from the weekend? And you give them a paragraph, what they would do is they would have a big box to kind of type as much as they want in. So I can see here that if I kept on typing the best show was, it would give them a lot of room to type, and it would give them a lot of space to kind of just put the full response in. So that's a written response question that you can add. And a lot of the times I used it for bell work or specific short answer or even longer answer responses for my students. So that's the type of question that you can use. All these are really powerful and allow you to focus on a single question if you wanted. Say you had bell work where you just wanted a couple multiple choice questions. That would work great. If you want a longer quiz, you can have multiple choice and checkbox questions. If you want a longer test, you can introduce a drop-down question. And of course, you can have written responses as well. So all those are at your disposal in Google Forms, and it's a really powerful tool, and we've only gone through some of the basic things that you can do. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit and kind of talk about the look of Google Forms. You can see here, every time I made a Google form, it just is that default purple. For your students, you can actually change the way it looks. So after you've kind of created your form or list of questions or whatnot that you want, you can change the look of your forms. You can actually do it at the beginning if you want it as well. And all you need to do is go to this customize theme icon. And when you click on the customize theme icon, it's going to allow you to choose a header, meaning a banner up at the top. Sometimes that's nice to do so that students get a sense of kind of almost a hook because it's visually pleasing and it's the first thing they see. So when I choose image, Google is going to have a ton of different images that I can choose as the header. And I'm going to choose one that's kind of school appropriate, or if I wanted to specifically choose something that is a little more fun for students, I could choose one of the options here. Of course, a night out and wedding would probably not be a good choice, but the work in school is usually pretty okay. So I'm going to choose real quick just a theme and insert it. And it's going to show me up at the top what that looks like. You notice it changed the color scheme of things too. When you choose a header, it kind of revamps the whole look of the form. And then you have the option to kind of choose colors based on your banner. So I can choose a nice color that suggests, or I can add my own color if I'm really into that. And of course, I have the background I can choose as well. A newer feature that Google's kind of added is changing the font of forms. Before, it was basically one font, but here you have a couple of different options to choose from. I'll choose Playful, and it's going to change kind of the look of the font as far as the question and whatnot. And that's the theme option. You are limited to what you can do with Google Forms as far as the look. So it's easy to use in that sense. You don't have a lot of options. Any questions about the theme so far? Okay, awesome. If you do have questions, feel free to ask CJ or just pause real quick and ask me. It's totally fine. Some more options up at the top are going to be very important for you if you want to turn it onto a quiz. Of course, we already talked about the preview option. That's going to show you a preview of the form. You can see now it's nice and beautiful, and there's a piano in the banner. That doesn't really match the quiz, but we'll just assume this is a music class right now. Okay. There's also the next set of options, which is the settings. And this is going to be great for you because you're going to have a lot of different things you can do from settings. When you click on settings, there's a couple things that you can add right to your form that will really help with logistics. The first set is to collect email addresses. You notice I actually had the email question in there, but if you clicked on collect email addresses, then it'll automatically collect the addresses. And of course, it'll inform your respondents, the people who submit, your students, that it's going to collect. This response receipt means that if you wanted to, you can click that option and they'll request a response receipt, meaning you'll say if they got it or not. Require sign-in. So this one is currently restricted to users in JCISD, and that's all your students. Of course, that's totally fine to keep checked. If you're giving this to parents as a survey or something like that, you would want to uncheck that so that anyone can do that specific quiz, because this option, they have to have an email from our consortium. So having that unchecked if you're sending a survey to parents is a wise decision. Otherwise, leaving it checked for students is totally fine. There's a couple of things at the end here that you want to take note of. If you click on edit after submission, it's going to allow students to go back to their assignment and edit it. So if it's a written response, I think that's perfectly fine. But usually for assessments like quizzes or tests or bell work, don't check that. Here is the summary of charts and text responses. If you check that, they'll be able to see kind of their summary of what's going on as far as the data points. So that is something that you can choose for them to see if you'd like. So those are the general settings and whatnot. The next set of tabs here that give you a lot of different things is presentation. So if you click on that, for your specific questions, you can actually show a progress bar as far as where students are in the actual test. If you have multiple sections, you can shuffle the order of the questions if you want. So if you're afraid of students kind of seeing the same set of questions as other students for cheating purposes, you can put that in there for them to kind of see. A show link to submit another response. If you put that on there, that's going to allow them to take the quiz or test again. If it's a one-time thing, I usually keep that unchecked. And then a confirmation record or a message is what is going to happen when they're ready to submit. So they're going to click submit, and it's going to give them a message saying you've submitted. So I'm going to put that in there. Thank you for taking the quiz. And once you press save, that's all gonna be good, and that is the settings will set in stone, and you'll have that for your quiz. There is a separate tab right here that Google added, I think about 6 years ago, that turned forms from a survey tool into a quiz tool for teachers. Google likes to take responses and kind of suggestions from teachers, and a lot of it is geared towards education as far as their updates, because they listen to their customers, specifically teachers, very often. So when I click on quizzes, I have a whole bunch of new options now that's going to affect the way my questions kind of interact with students. When I click on make this a quiz, it's going to assign points to questions. It's going to allow me to do that, and it's going to allow for auto grading. So it's going to automatically grade your questions after you put in an answer that is correct for each one. So I'm going to click on make this a quiz, and then it unlocks a few different new features for me that I didn't have before. There's this kind of feature here called lock mode on Chromebooks that it really it's just, when lock mode is on and students enter the quiz, they aren't able to go or open other tabs or applications while they take the quiz. So they have to finish the quiz in order to submit or go to different places. This only works on managed Chromebooks, so any student device that's managed from IT, that will work on. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So that's something to consider. If you have a school-wide one-to-one or a lot of different carts, then IT can kind of turn that feature on. And what you would do is turn on locked mode, and any managed Chromebook will have to go through that process where they finish the quiz first before they can do anything else. It's a really nice feature if you have a setup for it. The next set of options are release grade. So you can check that, and students will see immediately after each submission their grade. I usually kind of let them, I turn that on so they see what they have right away, so they're not wondering what they have and whatnot. Keep in mind, this works really well if you have just any type of question that has a definite answer. If you have a short response with text or a paragraph with text, it won't give them the full grade because you have to go in and grade that yourself. So that is something to keep in mind when you check on immediately after each submission for release grade. You can check later after manual review if you want. That's just something where you have to review the grade and you return it to them, and the email collects it. Okay, right here where respondents can see, this is, again, when they submit, they can see missed questions, correct questions, or point values. I kind of leave that on so they get kind of an idea of what they got wrong and what was the right answer. If it was like a simple little quiz, you might not want to do that for a test and kind of wait until you go over all the questions, but that is there for you to use. So when I press save, everything I've checked on is going to update for my form. So it's going to look a little bit different. I'm going to push save, and now I know that lock mode is on top. Well, since I'm teaching with distance learning in mind, my students might be using all types of devices. I'm just going to remove that and not worry about it. But where it says name, where I typed it in before, I now have this option of answer key. And of course, when I click on it, I can give it a point total if I want for their name. But of course, it's just their name, so I'm just going to leave it blank. Same thing with email. I can add in a short point. I can add in a point total for them if I want, but there's really no point. Here, though, when we get to the multiple choice question, something that you can add a point for, it's going to be important to kind of keep track of what is the right answer. So when I click on that question again, I have the ability to edit it, and all I have to do is click on answer key. And I have the option to make this worth 1 point or 2 point, whatever I want. And then now, since it's in answer key mode, anything I click on is going to be the right answer. So for this specific question, what is the central idea? I'm going to click on red. And you see that when I click on red, it's going to have a green check mark. And it's going to show me that that is going to be considered the right answer. So when students click on red, and they click submit, it'll automatically give them the points for that question. You can also click on multiple different ones if you wanted to allow your students to get the point from multiple different answers. But keep in mind, since it's multiple choice, they'll only be able to click one. All right, so I'm going to click done. And what's going to happen is it changed it a little bit. I see at the bottom, this is worth 1 point now, and I see that when I click on it, the right answer appears, and that's the one I chose. Any questions about that so far? Okay. Again, it looks the same for a checkbox question. So if I clicked on answer key right here, it's going to look the same. But with checkboxes, the checkbox questions, when I make it worth multiple points, and I choose multiple right answers, it's going to be a little more appropriate to do that in this type of question versus multiple choice, because multiple choice is only allowing them to click one, whereas checkbox allows them to click multiple questions or multiple answers. One thing I didn't go over before was the add answer feedback. To every question, you have the option to add answer feedback. And when you click on that, it's going to allow you to kind of add in specific feedback for incorrect answers and say, that wasn't correct because ... You can add in a link to something that will help support them if you think that the certain type of resource is going to help them get the right answer next time. You can add in a video from YouTube to help them relearn the concept if you wanted. And you can also just click on correct answer feedback, and that will give general feedback for the correct answers. This was right because ... And then when you press save, you can kind of see your summary for feedback for correct answers and feedback for incorrect answers at the bottom. It's just kind of your what you see on the teacher side of things. On the student side of things, they'll only see how many points it's worth, and that's about it. So that's what they'll see. Okay, and so here for the drop-down question, it's the same process. You click on answer key, you give it a point total, and then you click the right answer, and that's it. Very simple to kind of adjust the quiz, and then all you would have to do is click send, and you can email it to them. You can grab this link and send it to them as well, or you can add it to any type of learning management system without link, or you can, if you use Google Classroom, add this form right to your Google Classroom. You can also make blank quizzes in Google Classroom as well, so it's a nice integration. Any questions about the answer key feature and the quiz feature in Google Forms? Okay, again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us if you want. I'm going to go over some other features that will make your quiz or Google Form more interactive. So say you want to do kind of a worksheet instead of a quiz. And I'm going to go actually to forms.google.com and click on the worksheet option. And you'll kind of see here, it's going to give me a different setup. Again, kind of the same type of thing where I have my title. I'm going to change it to worksheet just 1. And then there's that description, of course. The short answer that I always put to any type of assignment for forms, and then the email as well if I wanted to do that. Here is a new thing that we didn't have before. It's an insert image option to kind of give you a chance to splice up the form a little bit. So since this is a default kind of I got this template from the form section. It's going to walk me through and kind of hold my hand for what to do. So since I have that here already, what I would have to do is go to the 3 dots and just change, and my image would appear right here. So I'm going to go to 3 dots, click change, and pick an image. I can upload the image. I can take a camera photo of myself if I wanted. I can go by URL. So maybe from Google, you have an image you want to use. You can choose photos from your actual drive. You can choose more specifically different type of photos and search for it yourself. And then you can also Google image search. So if I wanted to search an image of dogs, maybe there's a worksheet all about dogs, I would click on it and put inserts. And here we have a picture of a dog that's part of this digital worksheet now in Google Forms. If you didn't have that option where it's just there for you, like the template that I just showed you. You can actually do that very easily on your own. So I'll go back to the quiz that I just made. In the right, there are options for you to add things. And what you can add is an image right there with that icon. So you can click on that icon. And again, the option to add whatever you want, even by Google search, is there for you. And all you would need to do is insert it, and it will appear right in your form. So here is the image that I just inserted. Okay, I'll go back to my worksheet. So there is kind of a nice image to set the tone, kind of hook them in. And then, of course, since it's a worksheet, I can add in a lot of different other things. I can add in questions like I did before for a quiz, and it could be multiple choice or any of the type of questions that we went over. I can add in text. So this is great. It allows you in Google Forms to add in any type of text. So think about a news article or story. Students will have a paragraph to read as you kind of enter that in. And then, of course, beneath the text, you can add all types of questions that have to do with that topic or story or whatever. So it allows you to add in text right in Google Forms. You don't have to go to a separate place. If you want your students to see all of the different stimuli as far as written stimuli in one place, the text option is great. And the way you add that is to the very right. There's an option to add in text, and all you need to do is click on add title and description. So when I click on add title and description, it's going to allow me to add a title, story 2. This is going to be a dual paragraph, dual passage resource now. So you can see story 1 and story 2 right on top of each other. All you needed to do, again, was go to the right and click add title and description, and you have the option to add text. So think about copying a text you found online and just keeping it right within Google Forms. Any questions about adding an image or adding text to your Google Forms? Okay, if not, again, you feel free to ask CJ or myself. I went over add an image, but the next thing you can do if you wanted to splice things up even more, add more pieces of stimuli, you can actually add a video right into your forms. So when I click on add video, it allows me to search for a video on YouTube. So again, I'm going with the theme for dogs. And this is kind of through the education filter, so most of these are safe videos to use. So right here, I'm just going to select that, and the video is going to be right in the form. Students can watch the video right from the form, and then maybe you have a couple questions about the video below after they watch it. Of course, you can give a title if you want. If you decide that's not really the video I want, you can click on the 3 dots, and you can change it if you want. When I click on change, if there's a specific video on YouTube that I want them to access, I can click on URL and paste that from YouTube right here, and that specific video will appear. Okay, so that is the add video section of the options for Google Forms. The next one, the very last one I'll kind of talk about, is the add section. So when I click on add section, it's going to allow for a totally different section for them to kind of view. So I'll put this as questions section, and then I'll show you what that actually means. So I'm going to preview this from the student side of things. Here's my worksheet. I got a name I have to put in, email, due at email. There's the image that I just posted. I've got to answer this question. I'm going to read the text. I'm going to watch the video. Great. Of course, I can make it bigger if I wanted, but I'm then going to click next, and that's not a real email, so it's not going to let me submit it. Okay, so now I'm going to click next. And that's what the section is. It kind of limits students what they can see a little bit more as far as just being able to kind of comprehend things on a screen. So if you wanted to do individual questions or a couple questions at a time, you can definitely do that. Students can click back, and it does save their answer. So if they needed to refer to something on the last page, they can definitely do that with the sections feature. All right. And again, the sections feature is really easy to see because it labels it section 2 of 2. If you wanted to add another section, all you would need to do is click on that add section option. And this is going to be paragraph questions or something like that. So in order to kind of differentiate it. But yeah, those are all the features of Google Forms kind of at a glance. This is a very powerful tool because you get the different responses that come with each question caveat. And it can be used for a lot of different things. Any questions before I move on and talk about further kind of data points to it? Okay. And Google Forms is such a powerful tool that what I showed you can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you go and start using these forms and take advantage of that preview button, you can kind of start to see your quiz kind of take form and kind of see what things you've created. And you can actually submit this yourself as you do your forms just to see what data points you can get. So I can just quickly do this and submit this, and I can see how a student would actually view this quiz and how they would interact with it. Google Forms is very great that way, where it allows for experimentation and it allows you to kind of see all the different things in a timely manner. So you can always test out your quizzes or tests or worksheets before you hand it off to your students. And once you get any type of responses, you're going to get those data points. You're going to get all the different data points related to the type of questions that you put in there. So good looking graphs that you can take and share with admin and whatnot. If you wanted, again, to get the question breakdown, you have that question tab. You have individual students who took it and whatnot. You can see their responses and you can see their information right away. What I like to do oftentimes is there's an option up at the top to look at all the responses in a spreadsheet. So I'm going to go back to that Harry Potter quiz. And of course, here's more data. I have more data here, so it's going to look a little bit better. But if I went right into this green button where it says create a spreadsheet, if I click on that, what it's going to do is it's going to create this Google spreadsheet where it shows me all the responses. And it shows me the responses in a way where I can see at a glance all of my students. And then I can give it a title if I want. I'm just going to leave it at HP quiz response and then push create. When I push create, it's going to create a spreadsheet that links to my form. And it's going to create a spreadsheet that goes right to my test folder where I created this quiz. So you can see right here, I've got the timestamp, and that's when the students submit their score. Obviously, I made the quiz really hard because the only person that got a perfect score was me, the creator of the quiz. So that's okay, no judgment there. And then, of course, I can see what students answered per question. There's question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course, question 3. This is really nice if you've had a written response for students. If you had a lot of paragraphs that students have submitted, you can kind of see at a glance and correct all your students' responses in one place. I think that's really nice. In forms, if there are like a lot of different words or texts and whatnot, it can look a little bit confusing as it stretches out all the way to the right. So all you have to do in Sheets is kind of select the responses. And this is if they had a lot of paragraphs to submit, and you select that, and all you have to do is go to Format and then Text Wrapping and wrap it, and it'll give it like a nice kind of a view of wrapping so that you can read your paragraphs that your students submit a little bit better. Any questions about that? I often use this to grade the most, so I can see their score if it's just a regular quiz, or if it's a written response, I can see all the written responses at once and kind of compare them. Any questions about Google Forms? I know it's a lot. We don't have a long amount of time, and I wanted to save the last 10 minutes or so for any specific forms questions or anything you had that I haven't talked about quite yet.
I admittedly kind of zoned out for 1 sec when it came to you saying something about correcting their answers.
Mhm.
When you were in the spreadsheet. You were talking about it when you were in the spreadsheet section. What were you saying there?
Yeah, so when I have this spreadsheet open, if you just had a written response question, like what is the central idea and how you know, instead of the points, maybe you just have their name and then their response to the right. I like to be able to see all of my students' responses at once if it's a written response question, and then I can read it and easily kind of put a grade maybe to the right. And then after I've graded everything, I can enter that into my grade book.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So say that these were longer paragraphs, I could read it. I know Susan was the one that that wrote it. So I'll just put an 8 out of 10 right here to the right, and then move on to the next student. And that's how I kind of graded written responses when I was a 6th grade teacher for anything that's a paragraph or two.
Now, there's no way for them to see that feedback or get feedback on written responses in that way, right?
No, they won't. So since it's in a spreadsheet, you could kind of specifically call them up and have like a one-on-one, or you can quick email them if you take advantage of that. But if it's like just a quick point total, they'll see their grade and whatnot. And I would only do it for like short paragraphs. If anything longer, I would just use Google Docs and kind of give more specific feedback that way.
I have a question about the quizzes.
Sure.
When you were showing us how to put the answer key in there, okay. I went in and was doing it with you on the assignments that I made in Google Forms.
Right.
And then I looked at it in Google Classroom, and if the kids, this particular assignment has like 4 sections of 4 questions each. If they didn't answer the first 4 questions, it wouldn't let them go to the next. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it has to be, if you require it, they'll have to, I believe, it's just for submission. So let me see here real quick.
They couldn't even see the next set of questions until they answered the first 4 questions.
Okay, yeah, so to move on, you have to answer those questions if it's required. So if you require it, they won't be able to go to the end and then go back. They'll have to finish the questions first, then click next. Because you said you used the sections option, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering because, you know, oftentimes we tell kids to, if you don't know something, skip it and then come back to it.
Yeah, so in that sense, maybe I would make
not make it sections.
Yeah, maybe not sections, because then they could scroll up and whatnot. Sections are if you wanted them to specifically finish and spend time on a certain question. So yeah, that's a good point.
I had divided, it was measurement, capacity, length, weight, you know, so I divided it into those sections, but now I think I'm gonna not do that.
Another way to do that without like completely doing it in sections is you can add a title and text between questions. So say this central idea question, if I added a title and description, I can actually move that section to the top and put this as central idea 1. And then this section is based on main/central idea. And then that way you can still kind of do your measurement type things, and I'll show you what that would look like on this.
What did you just do?
So what I did was I clicked that. So every time you hover over a question,
right,
you can do something to put it there. And I chose add title and description. And
I got you.
On that, it's going to go right below. And I put central idea 1. So it's basically just a title. And in order to see what that looks like, I'll click on the preview button. I already took this quiz. so I won't see it, but the students will see like a nice little banner right here, and then below it there'll be the questions based on that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, if you don't have any other questions and you wanted maybe more specific time one-on-one to go over a certain thing, then pretty much contact any of us. We'll be willing to kind of do a one-on-one with you and kind of walk you through building it a little bit more. If you wanted us to test out any of your forms, you can kind of send it to us and we'll help test it out and see if it's working correctly. That's something we can do as well. Other than that, have a nice day and let us know if you need anything.
Thank you very much.
Yep.